when you take kratom, mitragynine naturally converts in the liver to 7-hydroxymitragynine, which is more potent than morphine that studies have been showing. And so it's an opioid. It's an opioid.
Welcome to the Sober Spill podcast. I'm your host, Isabel. On this podcast, we have real conversations with people in recovery, their families, and organizations that pertain to this field. Today, I'm here with the host of the clinical side of our podcast, Jana Wu.
Thank you, Isabel. My guests will discuss best clinical practices, new emerging trends in substance use and mental health disorders, and how we can best take care of ourselves and our loved ones in recovery.
See you every Thursday.
And come spill with us soon. Hello and welcome to the Sober Spill. Today, I'm extremely excited to have Hilary Tesluk in with us today. She is the Executive Director of End Kratom Addiction Now. Hilary travels the United States working to educate legislators and communities about some of the potential effects of kratom. I first met Hilary in person in January in New York City at the premiere of the kratom Side Effects May Include. And it was incredibly exciting to meet her because she's really been all over, very active, as we'll hear some about her career. And I've met her also, with her permission, I can share in Let's Talk Kratom in its early days. And it's really exciting to see your growth and how you're helping the community, Hilary. So welcome.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we did meet virtually years ago when I was trying to recover from kratom. I went to your support group specifically, which back then it was like one of the few that were offered. And so that's how we originally met. And then it's just been so many years since things have evolved, and I've worked on my recovery as well. And now I do work in advocacy full time, but I've been in the nonprofit sector trying to raise awareness about kratom addiction for years now. So it's really a blessing.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be here. We've actually known each other sort of informally, for several years now, which is really exciting to see the growth. And you're also an MSW student, and
I am.
I'm very excited about that too. So Hilary, would you just share a little bit about your history with kratom, how you found it, and a bit of your story?
Yeah, of course. So I first found kratom in 2017. I was 21 years old, and I'm someone with previous mental illness issues. I had anxiety. I still do. I live with it, and OCD. And so I was put on pharmaceuticals at a very young age, in my opinion, when I was 14. So they prescribed me Xanax when I was 14 and also an SSRI. And so I was on those for quite a while until kratom was introduced to me by a friend. And he told me that it was a natural alternative to anxiety. And I remember I took it at first, and it was just this elusive bag, this black bag with like a sticky label on it that didn't tell me how many to take or what it even was that I was taking. There was no indication that it was an opioid, of course. This was back in 2017. And so he told me to just take 4, which
Where did you even get it from? Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I got it from my friend. He told me about it and he brought it to me.
Oh, he brought it to you. Okay.
He brought it to me. Yeah. And he brought me the rest of his bag and he said, you can just have this. It was the boosted brand. And I used the red Mangda strain, which is the strain that's known for being the strongest.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'm talking about right now is just kratom leaf. Back then there was no 7-0. There was no synthetic extracts back in the day, I guess. But yeah, so I became really addicted to red Mangda kratom. And it got so bad that I lost so much weight. I really was suffering in a lot of ways for a long time before I realized that I was. And so, because the thing with kratom is for so long, you feel like you're the only one, and it's really shameful because you don't even feel like it's a drug sometimes. And so it's really hard to like come to terms with that. And so, it was difficult when I would try to treat myself, because I would go back and forth and say, man, I really got to do something about this. But then later on, I'd be like, nah, it's all good. It's a plant, it's my medicine, I used to say. So during the times when I would be like, I got to do something about this, I would try to do something. And so in 2020, I went to detox about 4 hours away from my hometown in Michigan, where I'm from, because at the time I was a case manager for substance abuse and mental health dual disorders. And so I
Mhm.
was also using kratom at the same time, thinking that like I was clean and sober. I'm also
Mhm.
a certified peer support specialist. And so it was really I was really having a double life for quite some time. So I go to detox and I try to get off of this, and nobody knows what kratom is back in
I
2020.
know, I was wondering, yeah, if the
Not even the
providers knew.
staff.
Mhm.
No, no, no one. So one person knew what kratom was, and he was a client. He was there being treated. And I was so embarrassed that I was on kratom. I was in there for kratom, that I wouldn't say I was in there for kratom. I would just say opioids, because
Mhm.
that's the truth. But that's not what they think when I say that. And so one guy pressed me on it and he said, well, what kind? And I said, "Oh, well, it's actually kratom." And he started laughing at me,
Mm.
actually. So, yeah, I ended up leaving detox early. I was gonna stay and do the whole thing for, like, a month and go to residential, but I didn't, and I left and started using again, and I my use was, pretty severe with the leaf. I used 50 grams per day, which is 100 capsules per day at my highest, so I was taking 25 times a day, 20 pills. It's basically all I was ingesting because there was no
It's a
room for
lot.
anything
So
else.
25 times a day you were dosing?
So 5 times per day,
5
I
times,
was
okay, I was like,
taking 20
20
pills. It's
pills. I'm
not
like,
any
"What?"
better when you put it that way.
Yeah, but 5 times a day, 20 pills. And can we go back to, I think there's so much with your story already, but I know one thing that there's sort of like a lot of, I don't wanna say controversy, I mean, there's so much controversy around kratom, but one of the things is, are the strains really different? You were using a red strain
Mm,
that you said really was, you felt like that was the one that helped the most, I'm assuming, with your anxiety. Um, and other people, favor green or white, but and
mhm.
then some people say there's absolutely no difference actually in the strands. What is your thought on that?
I'm so glad you brought this up because I thought about bringing this up, but I was like, no, I'm focusing on my story. Then I'll bring this up later. But yeah, so there has been science that's come out that says that the different strains are actually there's no difference between the
Mhm.
red, the white, the train wreck, and the yellow, which I was so shocked and I struggled to accept that because I remember so clearly that red Mang Da was the strongest. I tried every kratom, right? And so I don't have any evidence of this, but I believe that there were some kratom that was being influenced before even 7.0 came out. So I think that they were being enhanced. The kratom leaf was being enhanced in some way back then because seriously, this brand was super strong. So, but the science says it's a marketing gimmick. Green, white, red. It's all the same when they broke it down and saw the composition. It really wasn't any different.
I wonder about that. I think that there is like some strong marketing, and I think you bring up something that I definitely see a lot. I would say, number one, people utilize kratom for pain relief, hands down. But a really close second, I see as profound anxiety. I think most people that I've worked with, they came about it for anxiety. And for a lot of people, they say it was the best like the best thing for social anxiety they ever had, where they could do their job, they could show up in the world. And from what I'm hearing, you had a really social job. I mean, you're out on the floor, you're peer support, so like a recovery coach, like a certified peer support
Mhm,
for substance use disorders, and actually on the floor too.
mhm. I was,
Um,
yeah.
so that's a lot of energy, and I think there are so many people in recovery that get sold on kratom. For a long time, it was really promoted as, oh, and it still, it has obviously harm reduction potential, and but in some ways someday. But I think that it was really sold really quick as a the best harm reduction option for many people, without the informed consent of potential for what could go wrong.
Exactly. That's exactly true. Um, I've been in this world for about 9 years now, and I've interacted and engaged with thousands of kratom addicts at this point. What's and I've also worked professionally in the field, so I have this unique kind of insight when it comes to it. C- Overall, an addict, there is no normal type of addict. Like any which
Mhm.
person can be an addict, right? And so we see that, of course, with illicit drugs, like street drugs. But with kratom, something interesting happens is that there is an extreme diversity when it comes to the kratom addict. A lot of kratom addicts are highly productive individuals. And
Mhm.
that's not to say that addicts are not in general, but I feel my opinion based on my experience is that because kratom is also marketed as an energy booster, a
Yeah.
productivity
Pre-workout,
booster
totally. Yeah.
pre-workout. And so people who are working out and are like actually working and doing things are also taking kratom. And so there's actually more of a diversification, in my opinion, when it comes to the kratom population.
And I think too, we know like the research says that like some research, like out of John Hopkins a few years ago, was saying that like 61% of daily kratom users are female. And I thought that was super interesting.
Mhm.
And we don't see as many females in the room, but we know there are, and I'm sure we both know many females that do use kratom. And I think again, it is a very diverse substance that people are using it for a lot of different reasons. Um, so for you too, how was that when you, as like a addiction professional, realized you were addicted to something?
Yeah, I mean, it was a strange experience because looking back, it's so clear to me what was going on. But back then, like I was really my unconscious mind was working overtime to kind of try to like rationalize this to myself. But I had even though I was treating my anxiety with kratom, I still had severe anxiety.
Mm.
It worked in the beginning, but once I got to 100 capsules a day, I was just taking it to not get sick, and so the guilt of the weight of living a double life and not being true, and it just it tore me up from the inside out, and so it was very, very difficult for me to do that and to still come to terms with that because it's hard to reconcile helping people while also not living the values that you're trying to teach them. So it's very weird experience for sure.
Well, I do want to switch gears to some of where you are because you are helping a lot of people now. You're really using your voice. You're really out there and very brave. So, do you want to share what you do now, actually, with end kratom addiction?
Yeah, sure. So I do a lot of things. I do lots of things here. One of the things that we've been focusing on lately is making sure that lawmakers are educated when they're making decisions on kratom policy. So we've been hosting some lawmaker sessions that are state specific to just really educate about the other side, quote unquote, of kratom that isn't really so talked about because we all know about how it helps people, but maybe we don't know how it can kill you. So um, that's a main focus that we do. We eventually want to have our own recovery community. I would love to host the first grief group for people who have lost someone to kratom because like the addiction that is such a specific nuanced
Yeah.
pain that cannot be replicated. So eventually we want to extend out to there. We also want to do some research independently because a lot of the research out there for kratom is funded by the people who have a vested interest in the profit of kratom. So that's a problem. And
Mhm.
we want to combat that with our own resources. And so really we just want to raise awareness. I raise awareness about kratom addiction and how it can hurt people because when you go online there's a lot of confusing information and it can kill people.
I think too, I mean, you bring up an interesting point. 'Cause I do think there is some great research being done by NIDA, the National Institute on Drug Abuse. So there is some very, let's say, like even even research being done out there, like on harm reduction potentials, on different ways that it could be utilized more safely. I mean, I think we can all agree that people shouldn't be getting medicines from vape stores and gas stations, and it's putting like the salespeople in this position of pharmacists, which is
Right.
really a lot on everybody, right?
Yeah.
Um, but what do you say directly to people that say this is the best pain medication I've ever had? Why are you taking away the most successful pain
Mm.
med I've ever had?
Yeah, what do I say to that? First, I feel feel empathy for people who are in chronic pain. I understand. I have a family member who died, who lived in very severe pain, and so I do understand that. I would ask them if they are comfortable with their gas station clerk managing their pain management program. The thing about taking kratom and as a replacement for something is that I don't feel that there's enough independent research to prove that kratom is actually doing what it's supposed to be doing in your body and is actually, helping you. So I do not deny for a second that the healthcare access in our country has a lot of work to do, but I don't think that that's a reason for inaction when people are actually dying due to free access due to kratom. And so because people are dying, to me, we have to take it off the shelves and research its potential benefits because right now we can't. How many people have to die? It's just it's kind of ridiculous. That's what my opinion is on that.
I appreciate you said like a lot of your work is on education because I think we can all agree we've all seen like some lawmakers go on like a TikTok or like a Facebook and actually put out misinformation about kratom and you're like,
Mhm,
oh my God. Like I
mhm.
think he's talking about cannabis. Oh, I think he misspoke there. Like I don't want to say names that
I know.
you're like, oh man, I wish I could like let him know that was all
Yeah,
for the imagery that's like totally not kratom. You're like, that's
that's what
not
I do.
kratom.
I try to let them
Oh,
know. I try to
you're
let them
like,
know.
yeah, you're like, so you get a lot more buy-in if you actually had some accuracy. Yeah. So what are some common misconceptions you're finding? Because the other thing I think our listeners should know, you are like nationwide and
Yes,
you are
yes.
like everywhere and all over. But what are some of the common misconceptions you come up against with kratom?
So the biggest one overall is that kratom is good, but 7-O is bad.
Tell us more, because actually we have some like ask if ask it questions from some of our listeners, and one of them was exactly that. I have my answer, but how would you explain what the difference between 7-O and kratom is, and why they could
Mhm.
both be problematic?
Yes. Okay. So kratom is a natural leaf, as we might know from Southeast Asia, that we harvest, and we can compile it into a capsule or drink it as a tea. And then we can go a step further and extract the certain alkaloids in kratom that is responsible for activating the mu opioid receptors. And so there is a big divide right now legislatively in which states are either adopting a Kratom Consumer Protection Act,
Mm-hmm.
which bans 7-O synthetic kratom, but it keeps the kratom leaf legal versus banning kratom outright. So my
Which is what, like
opinion,
Connecticut scheduled it,
Connecticut
banned it
did.
outright.
Yep.
And how many states right now, as of today, May 12th, are banned? Because this is like a fast moving, fast changing. By the time we put this out, it might be different. But today, where are we at?
At least 9. I wanna say 10, but I don't wanna be on the record and be wrong, but 9 to 10. 4 states have recently made a lot of progress, like Kentucky, Tennessee. I know Tennessee recently banned it. Kansas did, and Missouri and Kentucky, I believe,
So when
have
you say banned it, that's all kratom, not just
all
7-OH.
kratom.
Okay.
Yep, all kratom, and so the reason why, um my opinion right now, it's always static, it's changing based on what I know to be true, and so there's actually been, some research that's recently come out that has evaluated independently what states have regulation versus what
Hmm.
states have bans, and comparing the poison control data for both states. And so it's been found that states who have banned it outright, kratom and 7-O, actually have a 3.19 times reduced rate of like severe medical outcomes,
Wow.
while the states that have banned it are actually decreasing the serious like hospitalizations when it comes to kratom, but the regulation states that keep it legal aren't really doing what they purport to do. And so because of that, right now I believe that yes, my personal opinion as Hilary is, yeah, I think it should be banned because that's what the science say is safer right now. Um, I'm going off on a tangent here. I forgot what the
No,
original
it could
question
make
was.
yeah, I sort of wove in a second question, but like the differences between 7-OH and kratom, because I think,
Mhm,
today I wanted to read Trump's statement from yesterday, that
mhm,
came out about 7-OH because it's really interesting. I was predicting that kratom would be a hot topic during the last presidential election. I was like, it's going to be in the debates. I like watched every debate, like
Right.
waiting for kratom to come. And I was like, oh,
Same.
wow. Really? Too? I know.
Yes,
It's just,
of
I mean,
course.
yeah. So, but, and all of a sudden now the president made a statement. And it was actually in, I have another drug policy that came out earlier in May that had kratom in the policy for like 27 times. But so President Donald Trump announced Monday from the Oval Office, so that will be Monday, the 11th of May, that his administration will be moving to federally protect natural, in quote, 7-OH. Natural 7-OH or 7
Mhm.
natural 7-OH or 7-hydroxymitragynine is a potent alkaloid found in trace amounts within the leaves of the kratom plant, Mitragynine speciosa. It is favored by many advocates for treatment of opioid use disorder, which President Trump alluded to in his remarks to the press just moments ago. And then the quote from President Trump, "We are looking very seriously at natural 7-OH and getting that approved. My administration will take a look at that very strongly. We're looking to see if we can do something there. A lot of people are asking for it," said President Trump. What do you make of that? We were talking
That's a really interesting statement. So, yeah, the distinction between kratom and 7-O, that's a really big deal. So, what I believe our president was saying is he intends to keep the kratom leaf legal. I think that's what he means when he says natural 7-O, although there is no such thing as a natural 7-O.
But
That
wouldn't
doesn't
the argument be like our body metabolizes a little 7-OH in our bodies every time we ingest some kratom?
It does, yeah, so it does. So there's mitragynine and 7-hydroxymitragynine in kratom leaf, and so mitragynine is the most abundant alkaloid responsible for the opioid receptor activity, and so no matter what, when you take kratom, mitragynine naturally converts in the liver to 7-hydroxymitragynine, which is more potent than morphine that studies have been showing, and so it's an opioid. It's an opioid. That's why it treats opioid use disorder, because it's another opioid.
So I just thought it was really interesting, this idea of natural. So we know obviously there must have been a tremendous amount of advocacy recently. And I'm thinking probably related to John Oliver's piece that came out on May 4th, which I don't know if you had a chance to see
Mhm.
that, but it was
Good.
wild to see, kratom really featured on a main platform. Again, we've been talking about it for years, both of us. Andrew Huberman had it on twice and so we've had some big speakers. Of course, Joe Rogan has spoken on it, but to see a whole half-hour segment nationally was really or I guess HBO, I don't know if you call it nationally, but in a big platform like that was really interesting to see the cultural shift right now. What do you make of all the talk, all the legislators that suddenly need education? Why do you think it's happening all now?
That sorry, I got goosebumps. Yeah, because I never thought, 10 years ago when I was using kratom that I would see the day where the truth would come out about people suffering from kratom, let alone the threat of it being removed from our country, having access removed. I used to pray for it, obviously. I used to pray for it to be banned so that I would finally be forced to quit. But I never thought I'd see this day, and even lesser, I never thought that I'd be, a part of it as well. So, my opinion is that kratom's been legal in the USA for as long as it's been in the country. And so enough time has happened for things to play out. So for addictions to play out, for people to die, people to have seizures, for people to finally be brave enough to speak out about their truth. Because if you're a kratom addict or someone that died from kratom and you post on Facebook about that, you need to be careful, because a lot of people are going to attack you who are typically kratom users themselves and don't want to lose access to their drug of choice. And so, I really don't know what exactly it is about this timing, 2026, but I think that the timing has to do with it, about the buildup of people being hurt by it just kind of overflowing at this point.
I wonder too, I know what we've seen is it's just become increasingly more popular, like in northern states, like New York City, where I am today. You can go into most sandwich shops, bodegas, and get kratom. I don't recall that like 5 years ago. I mean, 5 years ago, we were just like coming out of the pandemic. So people were buying all the sandwiches and such. But I think too, it's like the amount of sales that went up and how many people started using it, that then more awareness to potential for problems. I think that's what I've seen just from a sales
Mhm.
perspective, and just Connecticut gas stations too. We just saw such a steady increase. And then we've seen like some college towns like in Massachusetts, Northampton, banned it because they were seeing more use in the college town. So I think it might have to do with that kind of timing. And I
Yes.
think just it all is so interconnected too. Just we're in this time of like natural is better, and natural plant-based makes it natural, which we know that that's not the whole story. Like, sort of like how when we take an encounter, as they talk about in the cannabis industry, and you just take out part of that, you don't have the whole flower, you don't have the whole composition. And I feel like that's like the metaphor sometimes for this whole story, is like when you look at just a part of the story, you're not seeing the whole complexity of the situation. Yes, maybe it has these properties, as you talked about, that are highly touted, and there are people that undeniably say they've struggled tremendously, and that we've seen deaths, we've seen seizures. So can both be true?
Yeah, yeah, I think definitely is true that I mean, the science is coming out too that, it's steadily increasing. Um, I can't remember what the source is, but I trusted it. It was a federal source that 5 million users per year
Hmm.
was the last
That's a
reported.
hmm
Yeah, and so before that, it was 4 million. I don't know the years exactly, but yeah, it's
we
it's
can,
increasing.
yeah, I know the study you're talking about. We can reference that too. I
Okay.
think, um too, I want to go back to like the state to states too. Let's look at some of those states. So I mentioned Connecticut, and for years, yeah, we only had, what was it, 6 states that had kratom banned for probably like the last 6 years.
Yeah,
And
yep.
now we're up to 10, but it's almost like there was a net when Connecticut banned it, Rhode Island legalized it. And I
Mhm.
wanted to get your thoughts on that. Why do you think Rhode Island legalized it?
I don't have a good answer for you. I don't. I don't know. Um, I don't know what that was based off of. If it was based off of data or lobbying or what. I wish I had knew more about
No, that's
that.
fine.
Yeah.
What would you say to about states that try to get it banned and then the ban gets blocked? How does lobbying have to do with that?
So what I believe is happening is the American Kratom Association, the primary lobbying firm for the kratom industry. They are very well funded and powerful, and they, because of the increased scrutiny, I feel like have increased their efforts to ensure that kratom is legal. So I don't really know too much about the specifics, and really this is just my speculation and belief. But based off of my work and what I see is that they're able to speak to lawmakers in a way that makes them agree that, yeah, you know what, maybe kratom is safe, and maybe that it makes sense just to ban 7-0, but that's not based in recent data. And so it forces me to believe that the interests are not for the actual consumers, because that's not who they're protecting. And so I think that it really is just a misunderstanding for a lot of lawmakers. And so that's why we focus so much on trying to connect with lawmakers to help them see the other side, not to tell them what to do, but so that they know and so that they can make an informed decision.
Of what some of the complications are. Well, and I think too, one thing I'd say to our listeners that are like, well, that have hesitations about how much people are speaking out, is that it's so brave to speak out. There's still such a stigma to say I suffered with mental health, or I had a mental
Mhm.
health disorder and I went to detox and I'm struggling with a substance. Even though it's more common and there's less shame around it, there still is.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think for people to
Mhm.
come out and say I've struggled is incredibly brave. And when I see switching now, is like, it's interesting because as it gets banned, there is more hesitation in some communities to share, because now it's like, I struggled with a substance that's now scheduled in the same classification as LSD, as heroin. So again, depending on the community, it can
Mhm.
bring up a lot. So I would say to people that are highly critical of those that speak out, it's like this person's being really brave and putting themselves on the line professionally, socially, and they don't have to. Like, no one's being paid
Mhm.
to stop kratom. But I it really makes me worried and upset and saddened, I guess, that I feel concerned for women, especially because, like you said, there can be some really unhinged commentary for people that
Mhm.
do speak out against kratom. And it's like, why can't we all have our own experience? And I welcome anyone that struggles with what I say, that we can have a conversation. I've done that in person when I have met some people that have made a lot of comments on my post. I said, like, I'm so glad to meet you. I'm so glad we can be face to face and we can have a conversation, not behind a keyboard. And I wish there was more safety in that. And I worry more particularly about women, because women, it's like 1 out of 3 women will have a stalker in their lifetime. And I'm like, it's just, can we not like what someone's saying and not want to threaten or put down another person? That's what I'm like. I've had comments like, "Oh, you like stupid woman" or whatever. Like all these things. I'm like,
Yeah.
why is that personalized like that? It's so inappropriate to me. And like, we could have a conversation, but like, you don't have to call me stupid or comment my gender.
Mhm. Oh, yeah, I get that. I've gotten so many, yeah, like, death threats it's just incredible. It can be really scary. It used to scare me a lot because I didn't always do this work, I was a normal person before. I still am now, but I had, like, more of a normal job, like, I had things to lose for coming out and sharing my story, but I don't know. I get so inspired by everyone else who is sharing their story too, and so I feel like I can do it too. And so I agree that the culture is changing. Yes, and I don't know, for
But
me
it's still a lot
specifically, yeah,
to
it's
put your
still
voice
it's
out
still a
there.
lot. You can literally be at danger for sharing your kratom story, and that's not okay. I mean, if someone who struggles with alcoholism or with crystal meth and they share their story of triumph, they're celebrated, but when they tell if it's kratom, you're more likely going to get ridiculed for some reason. It's not okay.
Well, I wonder too if it has to, it is big business now. It is a multi-billion-dollar global industry.
Mhm.
And, when I look at actually the name even of our Kratom Consumer Protection Acts, it's
Mhm.
supposed to protect the consumer, but it also protects the right for people to consume and to sell kratom, which I'm not, making a statement either way about that, but just that it's interesting. And I don't think too, sometimes I get the argument like, so what, you want everyone to go out and have a fatal overdose? And it's like, no, I've never said that. Like that, there are ways like we can have a multitude of different thoughts about this. And also then people say, well, alcohol is worse. I didn't say alcohol was better than kratom.
Right, it's
I,
a whataboutism.
yeah,
Yeah, it doesn't
yeah,
matter in
exactly.
this conversation, yeah.
Yeah, that I actually am not a fan of alcohol or
Yeah, but
nicotine. Our 2 legal substances have some of the highest fatalities
yeah,
associated with them are our 2 legal substances, those
and
2 legal
sobriety
substances.
like, sobriety is an option too, it doesn't have
Mhm.
to be, like, what's worse than this. It's like, no, you could just be sober, that's an
Yep.
option, but I love that you bring up that you welcome some of that at times because I do the same thing as when I engage on social media a lot, 9 times out of 10, someone responds to me and says, "I'll bet you $1,000 you can't tell me one person that died from kratom alone." And I welcome that as an opportunity to share and educate. I said, "I'm so glad." It probably looks like I'm being sarcastic or like a bee, but I'm not trying to be. And I'll show them data. Say, this is actually no, people actually do die from kratom leaf alone. And here's some studies I'm happy to share with you. And I don't get any responses back, but people see that. And so that's another part. It's not our responsibility, I think, to be brave, but it's what moves the needle and finds meaning for us and also prevents harm from others. So yeah.
Can I ask too, a lot of people put kratom in the same category as kava, these ancient substances or, that are centuries years old. What would you say the differences are between kratom and kava from like a health and safety perspective or a sales perspective or, what are your thoughts on that?
Yes. So my understanding, and I've used kava as well. I have used Feel Free, which is a combination of kratom and kava in an extract shot, and I've used kratom alone. And so kava is not an opioid. That's like the most basic distinction
Mhm.
we can make here is it's not an
It
opioid.
doesn't
It
bind to the MU
it
receptors.
does
Yep.
not. No,
Mhm.
it's a different feeling. It's for me personally, it was less intense and it's more akin to a benzodiazepine, so like Xanax or Valium. Um, when you combine the two, that's very dangerous, an opioid and a benzo, right? But kava I still know people who have struggled with kava addiction, but not to the degree of kratom addiction is what I've witnessed.
Hi, I'm Ricky, recovery support clinician here at Mountainside. If you're a parent, spouse, sibling, or anyone whose life has been touched by a loved one's substance use, Mountainside's Foundation program can help. This virtual workshop provides personalized, therapist-led support, offering real tools to navigate your family's healing journey.
And at the end of your kratom use, what were some of your side effects or symptoms that made you want to stop using?
Yeah, I mean, well, what made me finally stop is I had lost so much weight that I really couldn't live my life the way that I normally would. Like, I wasn't able to stand in the shower for too long or like wash my hair for too long because my muscles had wasted away because all I was ingesting was kratom. And so I was also losing my hair
Yep.
and my skin was very gray and pale, and I was starting to nod out and miss meetings at work, and it was affecting my relationships and my mental health. I had a brief psychotic episode at one point, and
Like
so
a psychotic. Do you mind sharing
yeah,
a bit
like I
about
broke
that?
from reality at one
Mhm.
point, and it just you get to a point where it just you get tired of all the consequences that are happening, and you're forced to realize, oh my gosh, I have to make a change. And so that's kind of what happened to me.
Yeah. What are some of the side effects that you've seen from other people or heard about from other people in the community?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of losing hair, losing libido, not eating or overeating, so losing
Yep.
weight or
Yep.
gaining weight.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Like getting like really lethargic and sitting on the couch, just
Mm-hmm.
eating, or I've heard more commonly like what you shared, getting very, very thin and losing
Mm-hmm.
muscle tone.
Yeah,
And
I see
losing
that.
period, a lot of people have like sort of endocrinology or like
Yes, I
hormonal
lost my
shifts, like
period.
low testosterone. So you lost your period too. For how
I did.
long did you have amenorrhea?
Over a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have and I was really scared too because I wanna have kids, and so that was another reason too I had to get off because I wanna have a family someday, and who knows what it was doing. It was stopping my cycle, I assume because of the low weight, but you don't know. So, yeah, and other people, I would say, I mean, it's just the typical, like, heroin withdrawal, in the beginning, it's you're really sick, it's the sweats and the shakes and the you can't sleep and the anxiety and the crying spells, and then that goes away, and then you hit what's called a pink cloud and you feel good, and then the dread might set in, the post-acute withdrawal might set in, and that's where a lot of people relapse, in my opinion,
Yeah.
that I've
Yeah.
seen, is they get through the worst physical symptoms, and then they think that they're in the clear, but no, what sets in is a sort of anhedonia in some people, and so if it's not expected too, I mean, it's tough to go through, and so that's when I would personally relapse a lot, and when I would see others relapse is when they would finally hit that mental stage of like, "Okay, my brain is recalibrating, and it's still kind of broken."
And now you're using your brain a lot, like presenting a lot. And so Hillary was supposed to be here in New York City with me today, but she unexpectedly got sick. So we are doing this virtually. But
Mhm.
you really do have a job where you are all over the country, and it
I
is
do.
how how did you become like how did you guys get so forward facing and even get in contact with the legislature? Do you like cold call them, or how do you connect with them?
Yeah, I mean, a combination of luck and grit and chance. So, we like I don't know if I mentioned, we use public affairs software that the American Kratom Association uses, so we have access to all of the bills, all of the contact information, and things like that. So that's for our cold calling, and that's what we did to garner interest in our lawmaker sessions that had about 30 lawmakers in each of them for our first ones. Yeah, and so, gaining connections that way just through efforts, and then also, finding rare gems, like, what I like to say is, like Mike McKell from Utah. He was the first state Utah was the first state to implement the Kratom Consumer Protection Act, and he
What
was
year was
actually
that? When were they the first?
oh,
Like I
okay,
remember
I wanna say
Florida
either
like 2
2019 or
years
20
ago.
I think it was
Oh, that's a
2019.
while ago. Yeah.
Yep, and so he comes on to our sessions as he can, and he shares because he reversed it recently as much as he could. So Utah was the first state to introduce a regulation to say, hey, it's not working actually. So we need to.
That's interesting. After like 3, 4, 5 years of
Right.
observation, they're like, this actually hasn't been effective at keeping our community safe.
Exactly. That's what happened in Utah. And so that's why I'm confused about Rhode Island. I'm so intrigued. What was their reasoning for the opposite?
New England has so many small border states, and I just thought it was fascinating that as Connecticut's right on the border. I personally know many people in Connecticut that drive over the border now to Massachusetts or New York to get kratom. And I get it. It's illegal here, so they can go consume it over there and then come back, which is not safe, and I'm not advocating for that, but that's what people do. And
That's
it
what
makes it very
happens.
confusing when these border patchwork rules for people, like, if this is so bad, why is it legal there? If this is so bad, why can I literally go across the border and it's not even behind the counter? It's not even right where the cigarettes are. It's right there. I will
Yep.
say, even my kids notice. Like, we go to York, they're like,
Huh.
Mom, kratom's right on the counter. I'm like, I know. That is,
Once you know, it's so
wow.
crazy when you
It's
see
so,
it. Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, New York too. New York's very interesting because New York is a kratom consumer protection state, but
It
Suffolk
is.
County and Nassau County have been trying to ban it, and Nassau banned it, but Suffolk, it got voted through, and then I believe it had to go to the Senate, and then it got stopped because there was a lot of protest around banning it. So again, it's
Yeah.
like, if this could be done more safely, I think it would look very different. But the way it's marketed and consumed just isn't aligned with public safety.
No, it's not. And I think one death is one too many. And I'm confused on why it's not in this case. So that's, really the goal. The primary thing is we're just trying to raise awareness to that fact.
And we need
it can be
all
deadly.
voices. And that's the other part too, where I'm like, I think for anyone out there that's listening that is a kratom advocate, shouldn't we also hear the voices too of what are potential what are potential contraindications? Shouldn't we hear that what could be potentially wrong with it? Just like, for example, any other medication that comes out, you want to know the contraindications, you want to know the worst case
Mhm.
possibility and what to look for. And so
Right.
that's what really bothers me too about the suppression of the voices and the information. I wanted to go back to two. You detoxed a long time ago in 2020. How did they
Mhm.
even detox you from kratom?
So they just, well, first of all, my insurance wouldn't cover kratom because they didn't know what the heck that was. So I had to lie and say that, well, it wasn't really a lie, too. It's weird. I just said that it was opioid use disorder. They treated it just as a normal opioid, the same as if it was heroin, oxycodone. They gave me a clonidine patch to help with my blood pressure and the restless legs. They gave me Flexerol to help with the muscle aches. And I really can't remember what else. They would give me some other things to help me through it. So the withdrawal wasn't as bad having those medicines, but that's not the only time that I've withdrawn. So it can be a lot more intense, not going into an inpatient treatment center. But I would say, like, if you have the resources, go to rehab for kratom. It just
Don't make it
go.
so hard on yourself. That's why I say it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be this hard.
It doesn't have to
Um,
be. No.
no. I think too,
No.
we do see like medical detox, we see people coming in, but we also can see like outpatient withdrawal management, which is a long,
Mhm.
I don't want to say fancy, but it's a lot of words to say like outpatient detox that you can detox. And I actually have seen it be very successful with kratom, particularly. That
Mhm.
it's interesting because there are some differences between a traditional opiate, let's say, or a heroin or a fentanyl, that I have seen people be able to stay home, stay with their family, take a few days off of work, do comfort meds, maybe do another medication, meet with a doctor like every day via telehealth, and
Mhm.
safely get off of kratom. What they need typically is a lot of support if there's a lot of access. Which, by access, I mean like if it's freely available on the shelves, like easily, that makes it harder. It's
Right.
like, so I think, and yeah. So I think that there are different ways that people can do it, but it's not bad to need help. And I sometimes get accused of being big pharma. I clearly, not clearly, but I
Oh
do not
god.
work for a pharmaceutical company. I don't even get anything free from pharmaceutical. I don't get pens. I don't get golf trips. I don't get free dinners. Like, I
What?
don't work for big pharma. So it's like,
I don't
I know
either.
you get that, I'm sure too. And you're like,
Oh my
no,
god. If I got a
yeah.
dollar for how many times I got accused of being a big pharma agent, I would be as rich as they were paying me to be a big pharma agent. Like, No, I'm not. No
I
one
know.
yeah,
Yep. Nope. I don't work for them. I just want people to be able to live free of substances if that's what they want, and for
right.
it to not be so hard. And it's not like life shouldn't be hard, but I think particularly with some substances that are very insidious and really get in there and they change your whole behavioral activation and your way of living, that
Mhm.
to go on with your way of living, you might sometimes need a different kind of intervention, you know?
Right.
Um, so I want to go back to some of our questions. We actually have answered a lot of our sort of like ask it back, skip questions, but I'm curious, like, how did you finally kick it? If you went to detox and then you said you came back and you did use again, how did you
Mhm.
actually like put it down?
Oh, I would love to share. So, um, yeah, I struggled a lot for years because for years I didn't think I had a problem, but then I realized just by the consequences that I did, and so I started to try to find people online. And so the first thing that I found as a community of people like me was the subreddit r
Yeah.
slash quitting kratom. That's a big one for people. And so that was really helpful to me. I was able to like gain some days and some time after finding that and all the resources. And I would post every day and just stay engaged and it would help. Eventually I got a message on Reddit though from a woman named Jess who was promoting a kratom-specific meeting, and I had gotten the message before, and I kinda just wrote it off like, "Oh, whatever, yeah, I'm not gonna go to that." But I had been so desperate at this point, I had tried to quit. I was like, "What do I have to lose? Like, I'm just gonna go to this meeting." And it changed everything to
Yep.
see, like, all those people in the same virtual room. It was a speaker meeting and just, the similarities and just to be in a room with, like, 30 people who knew, like, it made me cry, and, after that, I was just hooked in a sense, and I was clean for 2 years after I first, discovered that initial meeting, and so community, finding other people with stories like mine is how I was able to get off of kratom.
I think it's so important. That's why we started our group too, of just like those particular stories, but also a place to ask questions. Um,
Mhm.
so important. So, so
Yeah.
important. Why don't we go over some of the states again to go back to where kratom is currently banned? You had said it one time quickly, but I want to go back over that list. And then I thought we just talk for a second about how we've got like the oddity of California, which I can never tell, is it fully banned in California or what is going on in California?
The public Department of Public Health as of 2026, the CDPH declared that the sale or manufacture of food, supplements, drugs containing kratom or 7-hydroxymetragenine is illegal. And so, yes, the governor announced that there was a high compliance rate of 95% following state efforts to remove illicit kratom from store shelves. So a lot has been removed since then. So it seems that it's one of those de facto things where it's not a crime to consume or possess at this point, but it is a crime to sell
To
it.
sell.
So that's
Okay.
one strategy that you'll see in legislation.
That's really interesting. And
Mhm.
then we know now, as you mentioned, Utah is has transitioned from a kratom consumer protection state.
Mhm. They
And
have.
then we have Wisconsin for a very long time has been had it
Mhm.
banned. Louisiana, is that a full ban?
That's a full ban. That's been a full ban for a while. Mhm.
Yeah, that's I thought. And then Tennessee, that's very recent.
Yes, the Matthew Davenport law.
Can you
Matthew
share about
Davenport.
that? Who
Yeah.
Matthew Davenport was?
Yeah, I think that she won't mind. Karen Davenport is the mother of Matthew Davenport, and, the bill that just passed in Tennessee banning kratom was the bill in his name, and so he died from kratom, and it wasn't just his story or just, his anecdote that led to the banning of kratom in Tennessee, but it garnered a lot of community and a lot of advocacy. And so he is just another example of someone who has unfortunately truly passed from kratom by itself. So that's what I want to share about Matthew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that just
let me actually correct myself
Yeah.
here. I don't know if I think Matthew Davenport might have had something else in his system, but that's another type of argument I hear a lot about, well, kratom kills, but it's mixed with other substances like antidepressants or anti-anxiety
or
medications. Like, well, who isn't
antihistamine.
on those things?
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure Matthew Davenport had a mixture of Benadryl and kratom in his system, which
That's
has
really something that we need to look more into. I hope
Mhm.
there is research right now because we know that that's not the only one. And a lot of people do take antihistamines to sleep. I'm not advocating for that. Just like you said, but it's important to say the reality. And I think that's also going back to Reddit, like why I started my group too, because I'm like, people are talking about this stuff on Reddit. They need to talk about it in real life, even though it's virtual
Yes.
real life, you know?
Yes. Yes, they do. Mhm.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Hilary. Is there anything we missed or anything else you'd like to share?
I mean, there's so much we can talk about, Jana. I guess we'll just wait for next time.
Yeah, well, I would love to have you back to come to New York City. Stay safe and well. And thank you for coming on as you're recovering right now. And I do look forward to when we meet again.
If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, Mountainside can help. Call 860-365-6764 to speak with our caring treatment team.